Hello, everybody. Good evening. And Lance Conley and I are back again. We just did a podcast the other day. We did one with a good friend of mine. Talked about hyper-preterism and its many errors in the scene. A little retrospect on Max King. Well, tonight we've got a special guest. He was here before. We had him a few weeks ago. Dr. Sam Frost. He's one of the foremost experts on hyper-preterism, and he's going to be talking about some recent developments that you may not know of if you've been on YouTube, haven't really been conversant with Facebook or any of the other social media platforms, may not be aware that certain things have developed or are in the process of developing regarding Gary DeMar and some other issues. So I'm going to give the floor to Sam. Sam, I don't know, you want to introduce this, kind of give us sort of an introduction as to what's going on here?
Yeah. Well, if you've been paying attention, so Gary DeMar, who's he's known in Reformed Presbyterian circles, I would say mainly, but he's been doing podcasts with this fellow named Kim Burgess, who is a full preterist from all stripes. So, and it's interesting that he's doing this, but the problem is the American Vision, which is his publishing outfit, published my book, Why I Left Full Preterism, which Gary DeMar endorsed. On the back of the book, you can see his endorsement. And in that book, I pretty strongly condemn full preterism. I don't condemn all full preterists to hell. I try to make the difference there. It's hard for people to make the difference between condemning an entire. I don't condemn all Mormons to hell. I think there's probably a lot of Mormons that will end up in heaven. But anyway, full preterism is a dangerous view. I believe it's outside of anything acceptable creedal orthodoxy Christian thought theology, and Gary DeMar has brushed up with a fellow Kim Burgess who's hyper preterist, full preterist. And I don't even care that he does that, because many of my friends are still full preterists, Larry Siegel and others that I still talk to. So that's not, again, that isn't the issue. It's that he's endorsing it. He's on the one hand, I'm not a full preterist, he says, but yet on the other, what's the big deal with full preterism? There shouldn't be any big real problem here. There should be a happy, relationship between the two, or tolerable for this, that, and the other. To which, if that's the case, if you want to argue that, I would go ahead and, I'm already ecumenical, so I'll bring the Mormons, Unitarians, Universalists in. I'll bring them all in. I'm a nice guy. Give me the reason to do so, and I will. But one of the reasons why I don't is because of the clarity. You're Baptist, Lance is Eastern Orthodox, and we all believe that what we call the second coming is still future with the resurrection of the dead. So here's three of us in three different camps that believe in the same thing, because it's what unifies us. In spite of our differences, it's something we all see from all different walks of life. And so Gary's point of view is not that he's full preterist, but that he's looking into the matter, studying. After 40 years of studying eschatology, he's looking into this, whether or not Jesus is going to return. And to me, I just finished, and I'll stop here. Oh, thanks for giving me the introduction. I just finished this conversation with a lady named Karen Rogers on Facebook. And she just doesn't see what the big deal is, why we're attacking Gary. And I love that word attack. Attack is used a lot today. So we're attacking Gary. And I said to her, if you don't see that it is a big deal, then that's the problem. Because the Trinity is a big deal. People will freak out if you deny the Trinity. Or that Jesus is not God. They'll freak out on that. Or let's say Jehovah's Witnesses, Jesus is a God. Whatever. It's just words. Who cares? We all believe in Jesus, right? See, that's where that's going with eschatology. That's what they would. It's just resurrection of the dead. Because I wrote back and I said, well, Gary says we get a new body when we die. And she wrote back, well, what's the big who cares what kind of body we get when we get our body? You know, why you guys are just nitpicking over this stuff? Who cares that, you know, when we get a body? Let's say we do get and I wrote back, just the fact that you're saying that is telling me you don't even know what the problem is.
Right.
You're not even aware of it. And that's the problem. If that right there is the problem. Because when you go back and read the church writings that we have from day one onward, the resurrection of the dead is like the sine qua non of Christian thinking and thought and salvation, soteriology. And our progressive sanctification is under glorification and resurrection. The whole program is built on the idea of a beginning and an end, looking forward to an end. And if you say the end is here, back here, well, then I'm not looking forward anymore. I've got to go back. So I've got to reverse everything. And Lance has noticed this, Brian, and you've noticed this, is that there's just no clue about systematic theology or any of this, how these things connect and are intertwined together. They just think it's an idea that's some monk in the 14th century came up with some day that our bodies are going to rise again from the dead. And it's a stupid idea. And what kind of moron would believe in that? It's dumb. Our bodies are obviously disintegrated into the dust. So how could they be right? And that kind of thinking is now going along as Christian thinking. That is perfectly fine. And I'll let you guys comment on that, because that's the problem. That's the very problem that I'm facing. Anyway, that's my
what's crazy about that whole thing to me is that, like, Second Temple Jewish scholarship, scholar after scholar is going like, this is what they believed. They believed that the flesh would rise again, and that the Holy Spirit would revive them, and that the only difference is, like, your body would rise. It'd be the same body that you were born and died in, and like the only difference is, like, it will be without sin or error. Like, it'll be what it's supposed to be. That's why Paul says pneumatico soma. He's not, if he wanted to say it differently, he would have said like apparition soma or pneuma soma. You know, he would have said like that. He would have said like it's a ghost body, or he would have said like it's an ethereal body. Like, he would have said that, but no, he says it's a pneumatico soma. But I saw that you and Jason Bradfield, Uri Brito, I'm not going to name all of them, but Durbin, Gentry, Kaiser, all of y'all signed, you know, this open letter to Gary DeMar. And, you know, he made the podcast about that. And I saw everyone talking about how, like, oh, this is such an attack on Gary DeMar. I read this and I'm like, where's the attack? like there's no attack here.
Right. It's not
like,
an attack.
Like, this is like the nicest thing I've ever read. You're like, Gary, we seriously and deeply hope that you will receive this as deeply burdened hearts, and that to respond to us as those who love you in the Lord and have appreciated your public ministry. Like, how much nicer can you get on that? Like, there's nothing condemning here either. Like, y'all are just asking him to clarify his positions, and he's like, I'm not gonna do it because like, okay, like, clarify your position. Like, how hard is it? Like,
I think we should ask this of any leaders that are in his area. If I get asked what I believe, Lance, you get asked what you believe. You've written a book, and so you're responsible to a certain extent now out in the public. To where,
right.
So you can't. Lance, is Jesus God? Well, I'm looking into then you shouldn't be teaching Christianity if you can't answer that.
Well, and the other thing too is I think I told Gary this once, and I was like, okay, I can even be like very lenient and be like, okay, yeah, sure, you're looking into this. Well, now you need to stop teaching for right now.
Yeah.
Like when I was reading David Bentley Hart about universalism, you know, like, am I going to agree with it or not? I don't know, but like, while I'm looking into that, if someone asks me like, hey, what do you think about hell? What do you think about this? What do you like? I'm not going to answer it. I'm going to be like, I can't answer that right now. I'm working on it. Like, and Gary doesn't even do that. He's just like it's bizarre. Like, but he's trying to. I can say this because he's got me blocked and stuff. But like, he's just playing both. He's playing both sides. Like, Bradford said the other day, and I agreed with him. Like he's playing both sides out of his mouth. You know, like that's what he's doing.
And I appreciate it. Jason, and several others. It's not just me. Everyone's saying just because he doesn't agree with your view. It's right. There's 203 signers now on the website that Jason created all this. We've been agonizing over this for like 3.5 months, 3 months, as to how to do it. We went to Gary privately. The guys that are on there, a lot of them know the board members. They know Gary far more better than I do. I'm just like a very loose associate. But the fact that Gary, publishes my books, he sells Gentry's books, and that he brushes us off as if like we're nothing, we're nobody. He doesn't need okay, Gary, if you're watching this, then who are you? Who do you? We're just all in this together here, trying to make sense. And because of what you're doing, that's creating waves over here for me, because I'm getting inundated with all kinds. What's going on with Gary DeMar? I don't know. Ask Gary. Well, I can't because he's blocked me. So apparently, Lance, you and I are not the only ones he's blocked. Apparently, he's just blocking all kinds of people. Anybody that asks him or dare challenges, he blocks. And I'm like, that's crazy. I'll block people, but
and then
do something pretty bad.
And then he goes around like acting mad and demonizing people for it. So it's like, okay, at least for me, I just was like laughing about it because it's like, yeah, I know I did the Sergius Bale thing, but like, I just fake credentials just like Don Preston did, right? Like the dude's got a fake degree. So
harmless.
I mean, it's harmless. Like, oh no, I did the same thing as Mark Twain. Oh no, how dare I?
I didn't know you were Sergius Bale, and when I found out that you were, I laughed as a joke. Like, that's pretty good. I wasn't like, my head exploded. You're like a child molester. Who would do this? I think
okay to use
just get bent out of shape on this.
It's always okay to use aliases, and I've been using aliases for years. But the irony about it all, guys, is that I did look at the American Vision website, and it does have an Orthodox statement of faith. It says very clearly, we believe in the personal bodily return of the Lord Jesus Christ at the consummation of history, et cetera, et cetera. So this is something, I don't know if you guys have ever remember the downgrade controversy that Charles Spurgeon was involved in, where he was telling people, hey, there's been a downgrade in the faith. It's happening and it's developing during our own times. And everybody just talked him down. They didn't want to hear it. But one of the aspects of that downgrade was ministers sailing under false colors, where they would accept salaries and emoluments to defend the Orthodox faith, whereas they were really teaching, infidelity. They were denying the virgin birth. They were denying the inspiration of Scripture, etc. So I see this happening in our own time, not necessarily only with Gary, but in other areas as well, where people are. Zach Davis, for is an example, accepting Southern Baptist, Orthodox, salary, but he's preaching, full preterism. So they do this. They like to stand behind the Orthodox banner, whereas they really want to preach heresy. Now, to me, that's a wolf in sheep's clothing. Yep. I don't care which way. I don't care who says what.
Dishonest.
Yeah, dishonest. It's very disingenuous. I agree.
So if you go to a PCA church, clearly I know what they believe, PCA, on Second Coming. They're pretty clear. And yet you turn around and are teaching something like full preterism. And I know Zach Davis, am aware of that. I think that situation may be getting taken issue with in the SBC. But that's a good point, Brian. Yeah, if you're Southern Baptist in the convention and you're teaching full preterism, that's dishonesty. It's real
very disingenuous. And it's okay to, I believe in liberty of conscience. It's okay if you really believe the Bible.
Big believer in liberty of conscience.
Full preterism, go for it, man. But don't stand behind, don't pretend you're something else and accept the salaries and emoluments for being that person when you're actually the exact opposite, going, running behind the scenes, teaching heresy, and even doing it openly. They're not even ashamed of it anymore. They're just doing it openly. I'm not saying Gary. Yeah, I'm not saying Gary's necessarily, because I don't think, well, I don't know if he is or not, but I'm just saying he's doing what he's doing is very disingenuous at this point. And he blocked me too.
And it should be understood, because most 98% of the people that read Gary are Reformed, post-millennial, evangelical, Orthodox, conservative, red state kind of conservative kind of politician, that. And so that's, yeah. And I'm all for academic freedom. That's not my point. Again, I believe in the possibility of somebody exegeting something in scripture that nobody has ever seen before, or maybe taking a scripture and translating it in such a way that's perfectly legitimate. It's just nobody ever has, but it's legitimate to do. Scholars do that all the time. That's periodicals and theological journals. They're doing this all the time. I don't have any issues with any of that kind of stuff. Never have. And then as far as being ecumenical, I've got Baptist and Pentecostal and Catholic and Orthodox friends, and I have liberal friends and conservative friends. I try to live at peace with all men peacefully as much as I possibly can. There's Democrats that go to our church. Okay, great. We'll talk about these issues one-on-one separately as we go along. That's not the problem. Brian, you said it. It's once the church is already massively under attack because none of us know what we believe in anyway. Who can figure the Bible out, right? And so here's something that's unified us all, the second coming, and even that's wrong too. And I'm like, well, once that's gone, then what else did we mess up? And Lance has noticed this. At the same time, these guys hang on to the Trinity, which is purely a man-made doctrine. There's nowhere in Scripture where that comes right out and says God is 3 in 1. Homoousios and hypostatus. None of that's in the Bible. That's all developed by ignorant men. These church fathers,
yeah,
who didn't even know that Jesus returned and raised the dead. How in the world are they going to figure out something of great sophistication like Trinitarian theology, which taxes the mind beyond any kind of thing, and yet they don't know what resurrection of the dead means.
Right.
It's like, well, once that's up, that's done. I think you can believe anything now, as long as it's me and my Bible, and this is what I'm doing. And if I use the moniker, I'm studying these things, then anything goes.
Right. Like, I mean, I have no fight to pick in this, obviously, since I'm Orthodox, but like, I noticed, like, when Gary did the podcast, like, he kept arguing, instead of like sola scriptura, he's arguing like solo scriptura, where it's like, it's just me and my Bible. That's all. Like, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like I'm going to be fair. I'll be fair. He did say that he's going to address the open letter, like in other podcasts, right? So maybe he does. Maybe he does. But the first one, he says he's going to answer something during the podcast, and then he never answers a single thing. And
no, he doesn't.
No, he just goes.
Now, he has just one podcast out right now.
Yeah,
I heard one Monday.
Yeah, there's.
Well, he didn't say anything.
Yeah, like he says nothing. He just
Pretty
like.
much.
Yeah, it's just absolutely nothing.
I'm a nice guy. I get along with everybody. I love everyone. Yeah. Everyone's great. Except the people that challenge me. I'm going to block them left and right. I'm never going to talk to them.
Right. Yeah, I mean, but I found that really, I find it weird because, like, I get that some reformers, they're going to try to say, like, well, we're constantly reforming, right? So, like, some of them are starting to, like, do this in the progressive sense where it's like, okay, well, I don't like this, so I'm going to progress here and I'm going to try to reform it to be to fit in my image instead of like fitting into what it should, like, you know. Yeah, so like I feel like it's just like more reductionism happening, and so it's like it's just
A problem.
evolving.
It's
I don't know.
definitely a problem. It's an American thing too.
Oh yeah, true.
America, or we're rugged individualists, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps kind of people. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tread on me. And I'm all that. I believe in all that. But that rugged individualism, I was studying the history of Indiana, religion in Indiana. And it's like, you know, Indiana became a state 1816. And you had this just plethora of Methodists and churches springing up all over the place. And all of them were basically anti-authoritarian, individualistic kind of appeal. And ministers were not trained in any way, shape, or form. They were just, you know, filled with the Spirit, and they had the Bible. And I even get and empathize with that.
Yeah, same.
I get that. You know, I'm not a person that believes that I've met people who have never been to Bible college who know the Bible like you know, for 40 years they've read it backwards and forwards and or self-studies. Can you be a self-study? Yes, absolutely. The Bible is an accessible book. It's meant to be read by God's people wherever they're at. And so I don't have an issue again with that. But when you're coming at things with a type of authority, you know, like a teacher or an authority, you don't treat dentists this way, or doctors or lawyers. You go to the vet. You know, where'd you go to law school at? Well, I never went to law school.
Right.
I just read some books on it and thought I was pretty good at it. Have you passed the bar exam? I don't need no man-made bar exam.
Right.
Why do we allow this in Christianity? You know, it's like, you see what I'm saying? I understand that people can read their Bibles for themselves. I get all that. But then there's a level of authoritative type of echelon there. And we respect that everywhere else, except in the church. We just let anything go, just whatever. If you say you're a Christian and filled with the Holy Spirit, you're good. You know, we'll let you fly. And this is a problem. So now we've got this big divide on the Asbury revival thing. And I've watched this thing take out. And of course, studying church history, there's been revivals. You know, revivals are nothing new. You know, there's 4 or 5 of them going on right now. What is a revival? What constitutes, you know, revivals? And if the news media now gets involved, and then now a lot of people are going to want to show up because that's where the place is happening, and so just people show up. And now we go, oh, we've got thousands of people. Well, a lot of those people are there because the news media is there. They're just like flies buzzing around a light bulb. They you know, just, so it. I don't know why I got off on that. No one's claiming. Well, they're saying, Asbury. They're saying, well, there's no leaders here. There's no representation here. This is just the Lord. And I'm like, well, that's great and everything, but that's not. If that's the case, then move it down the road into another place. Why are you keeping?
We've seen how that
somewhere else.
Like we've seen how that works. Where we don't have any leaders. You know, you and me have both seen how that works with the whole preterist movement. I think it's interesting that like Gary claims like he's a conservative, you know, hardcore conservative, right? But then like this full preterism stuff, like he's being very can I even word it as ecumenical? Like can I word it as that? Because like I don't know that I would call it ecumenical because it's like allowing heresy into the fold, but like I mean, I just think that's funny though, because it's like, okay, you claim to be like this very conservative, like conservative Republican, and then it's like, but why are you liberalizing here with like full preterism? Like, yeah. I don't get it. Like, it doesn't. Like my head's like, what's going on with that? You know, like it just
doesn't have anything to do with the personalities either. Most of these guys,
right.
are conservative, Trump voting kind of Christians
Right.
that believe in the Bible, and they all their other doctrines you really probably wouldn't have a big giant problem with. So it gets back to that thing again, what is the problem? And the problem is we look forward to him to descend from heaven and earth, the judge of the living and the dead, and we look forward to life in the age to come. We're confessing with the Holy Church from all four quarters, all walks of life. For 2,000 years, we've been confessing this. And when you rip that out, because if that's the case, if the church has been doing this in its confession, then they've also been doing it in its theology. So the entire theology is worked out towards, and I look forward to the age to come, and he shall descend and raise the living and to judge the quick and the dead. So that all theology is worked out towards that end. So if you just rip that out, be prepared to rip out all of the theology that's done with that in mind, like progressive sanctification.
Right.
Progressive unto what? Dying and going to heaven? Okay, great. I die and I go to heaven. Is that it? So, but Gary's wanting to come in on the post-millennialist side and saying we need to be socially active in every area of life. You need to go and run for a local school board, and you need to go and protest the abortion clinic that's down the road, and you need to go protest that. And you need to register or letters of complaint or affirmations to your U.S. senator or your local senator or local house, and you need to be involved politically, in the local chamber of commerce and the local, all this bunch of, and you got to be that, because Christians are involved in all these areas of life. Now, when do I have time to do all of this, Gary?
Right.
I got other things, or become a little league coach or whatever. And so he's very involved in this social activism, and
the irony of it, is,
but for what end?
Yeah, the irony too is, okay, he wants to do all that, and then he wants to accept full preterism, or I shouldn't say that. I should say he seems like he's trying to make an avenue for full preterism, I guess, to be accepted. Well, if you do that, yeah.
As I understand it, I'm sorry, Lance, I interrupted you.
Okay.
As I understand it, just to tap in on what you were saying, he wanted, with his agenda, with his social activism agenda, it would be easier to move forward if you have all of these negative sanctions, all of these, the rapture, the man of sin, all this stuff get put behind you, so that we could focus on, this social agenda. So I always understood, Sam, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but with the post mills, at least the Gary North and Gary DeMar type, that the negative sanctions need to be behind us, so that we can focus on these agendas, so that we don't have something that we're looking for. Well, there's going to be a great apostasy, so that's going to frustrate our social activism. There's going to be a man of sin that we need to be looking. He could be alive now. This is going to frustrate our plans. We need to get this stuff. If we could put this stuff in the first century, get this stuff put as past fulfillment, it's going to be a whole lot easier. But the problem with a lot of these guys, and I've seen this several times in the past couple of years, is now they're starting to say, some of the post mills are starting to say, oh, we're at the end of the millennium. Now we're in the Gog and Magog deception. So that's kind of maybe why Gary may have seen something like that. And that may be why so many of them are now jockeying towards a more full position, because they're saying, well, what good is our social activism? What good is all of our preterism if we've still got this big apostasy at the end of the millennium? Now we've got to put it all behind us. And now we've got to really, embrace, now we got to go 99.9%. So maybe that's it. What do you think?
Amillennialism doesn't have that issue. Postmillennialism, the end of the millennium and Satan and gathering all big. I've read so much on what that is, and it's clearly a big giant problem, as you just pointed out. And then it also is a problem with the premillennial view. Jesus comes back and he's hanging out in Jerusalem for 1,000 years, and And then all of a sudden, hey, all right, let Satan out. Just kill him. Kill Satan. All right. Why in the heck you got to hang him around for 1,000 years? Get rid of him. The amillennial position doesn't run into those, but postmillennialism does, as you just pointed out. We did all the social activism, and the gospel is now, 90% global in all the nations and laws and legislation and everything. All right, let the devil out. let him destroy and ruin all this that we've just done. And where did all these four corners of the nations come from that are going to gather together with it? Who are these guys? Are these the ones we were suppressing under our Christian theocratic rule and just trampling over and oppressing? We get to be the new oppressors, I guess. A lot of that stuff has not worked out. That's why I'm not post-millennial.
Well, and you guys notice too, like, but this is what gets me though, like with Gary doing all this conservative social activism stuff, right? Like, if he accepts full preterism, like, as being acceptable, like, at least when I was a full preterist, I took the king approach mostly.
Oh yeah.
So like, okay, if spiritual death is destroyed, like, what's the like Gary's gonna make a big deal about like homosexuality, gay marriage, transgenderism, all that, right? So like, okay, but you want to accept full preterism. So if I accept the way that Max King saw it, like, what the hell's the problem then? Because it's like,
right.
you've been attacking us for years, and now are you going to, like, with your social activism, are you going to be like, okay, well, gay marriage is fine now, all of this is fine because I said this wasn't fine, but now that I accept full preterism as acceptable, I don't personally believe it, but hey, it's acceptable for Kim Burgess to be full preterist, and I accept him as a brother in Christ. Like, okay, like, all right, that's a problem though. Like, that's a big contradictory, like, worldview problem. Like,
Yeah.
Like, that's what I see.
It is.
Anyway. Like, yeah, like, I don't.
Not to mention the fact that you have this infinite amount of time, or even in post-millennial thinking, you got millions of years. I've heard some post-millennialists talk about millions of years. They say, well, I believe in the end of history, but that could be millions of years from now. And to me, that kind of speculation that's like the sun burning out in 5 billion years. It's so irrelevant to me for now. Who cares? I got to do what I got to do right now. But if that was the biblical view, that we're going to hang around here for millions of years, which I don't think that is the biblical view at all. Because it just doesn't make any sense. It runs. You can't put words to it how absurd the idea is. And I've spent so much time with the philosophy of history or historiography, and they all operate on this kind of understanding that eventually this can't go on. This doesn't go on forever. Well, Don Preston, I asked him that, and he said, well, now we've got God miraculously preserving history for infinity.
Right.
So now you're introducing a miracle. Where does the Bible say this? I can't seem to. Well, you have it in the new heavens and new earth. Yeah, that's without sin and death and entropy and all the rest of that. It's all gone. So that's a temporary thing, but you're introducing the thing that I'm bringing in out of new heavens and new earth without sin. You're introducing that very thing in earth with sin, death, and rape and child molestation and all the other things that we hate. See, eventually they have to bring something in like this. And so I'm like, well, where's the relevancy at? And who cares if I'm a full preterist or not a full preterist? Why does it matter to you that I'm not a full preterist? Why does it matter to you that I left full preterism? I'm socially active. I'm a chaplain. I visit elderly homes and hospitals, and very active in my church, and try to be as evangelical as I can be. And that's attested by my peers and people I live with and family. All the people I know have never heard of preterism, and they're very active, good people, active. So who cares whether you're full preterist or last days or not? Or see, that's, in other words, why are you making this an issue? If it's not an issue, if nobody cares about eschatology, if we don't even know what eschatology is because you're still studying, then why are you so adamant about me, whether I condemn full preterism or not? It just shouldn't matter. But they do. They get upset when Gary DeMar got upset with me because I was using the phrase hyper-preterism. You remember that when he wrote back and he said, you might find a better term. Who cares? Who cares what I call it? What difference does it make whether I believe the man of sin is coming tomorrow or whether he was in the first century? See, that's where they're not. And Brian, you hit the nail on the head. If I believe that the goal of the church is to convert the globe before Jesus returns 1,000,000 years from now, so social activism then becomes everything, then I have to get this global man of sin person guy behind me in great tribulation, bowls of wrath, trumpets. I got to get all that behind me, so that it opens the door up for a millions of years future. So after, I guess, if we could just get enough people converted to, take back America.
Right.
Is that what Jesus wants me to do? Take back America? Because America's already his. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it is his. It's all his. The wicked and the righteous, they're his. They belong to him. The whole world belongs to him. And he's running it exactly as he wants to run it.
Right. And also when he sends us bad leaders, it's because of our disobedience. I think we learn a lot from the Old Testament where he sent them, he sold them into bondage when they disobeyed him. So I think there's an analog in the New Covenant age where I believe if, the reason why we're having these problems right now with bad leaders, with leaders that are actually against us, is because we as a church have not fulfilled the commission as we ought to. I mean, we've, all this infighting, all this, all this psychology, philosophy that we've pumped into the gospel. It's not the gospel anymore. I'm not saying that the gospel has become entirely corrupted, but I'm saying in many areas, like the big mega churches, have completely corrupted the gospel with psychology. You've got people, pumping philosophy into the veins of the church, psychology. And at some point you have to really wonder why it is that we're going through this. So, I'm not going to, expatiate and all that, but, I think it's really telling because, he's preaching, and I know a lot of these guys, a lot of them are preaching civil disobedience, which to me is contrary to everything that Christ taught. Even in the reign of Nero, he was teaching that, Paul was teaching, Peter was teaching, be subject to magistrates, be subject to these secular rulers. And, he wasn't teaching, they weren't teaching civil disobedience. They weren't teaching, January 6th. They were, being submissive, because what's eventually going to happen with a lot of these guys is they're going to foment some kind of riot, and it's going to get us all thrown in the hoosegow. And I'm not going to be, when I'm there, I'm going to say, hey man, I pulled the lever for this guy. I didn't pull it for that guy.
It makes a case. It's this marriage of what they're calling now this Christian nationalism, that I don't like. That to me is I get it. I empathize with some of it. And then there's another part. It's like, I'm a sojourner here. This is not my home. It will be. It's the same thing with the land of Canaan. Canaan was not Abraham's home. God gave it to him. Abraham wanted Canaan, but he wanted it without sin. He wanted a better country. Right now, it's full of pagans and people who sacrifice their children. And Abraham doesn't, you can have it. But if you renovate it and restore it, I'll take it. I want a better country. I think that's what Hebrews is trying to get at with what Abraham, better country, not heaven. Abraham already had heaven, but God was promising him land. But the land that he was looking at was thoroughly pagan. And so he wanted a better country. But he realized that I'm not going to be doing this anytime soon. I'd have to wipe out all of these wicked people. You'd have to wipe them all out. And God did that once in the flood. And then sin reared its head again immediately. He get off the boat, he makes wine, and curses and blessings are flying out of Noah's mouth again. And then you have the Tower of Babel. So the whole thing starts over again. So maybe the answer is these governments that we make, and this idea of like taking America back and all this other stuff, because we're, I will say that, leftists, anti-Christian elements have gotten real high up and involved in education and all. Okay, they have. So, and it's making some people's Christians' lives that were comfortable now a little uncomfortable. And it leads me to think that this country has never been bombed. We've never lived through where our cities are being just constantly bombed and your houses are being blown up all the time. And there's constant invading armies that are just constantly fighting, and you're hearing missiles going overhead. Oh, that's and we're a very fat nation. We're a very fat people. And when a school teacher says, I don't believe in your God, to us, it's the end times. We've got to take back our schools. It just rocks our whole world, because just how dare there's a school teacher that is an atheist or that's queer. And that to us is like tribulation.
Right.
I don't think we know what tribulation is. This country's fat. Now, you want tribulation, go into the inner city, some of the places. It's happening. It's erupting, like you said, Brian. There is judgment that's showing its signs in the classic prophetic sense. You go back and read the prophets, Isaiah, right out of the bat, chapter 1, he's talking about your economic woes, your gold balances they're full of dross. He's talking about economics. Your economy is collapsing. That's a sign of judgment from God. Your economy is no longer honest anymore. Your silver is not worth silver anymore. You're lying to the people when you say, here's a quarter of silver, and it's not. It's got lead in it. It's dross. It's copper. It's not worth 25 cents of silver. That's for sure. So your money begins to escalate. And then there's invading kind of armies and other types of collapses and bad leaders. You start seeing this kind of stuff. That's the wrath of God. And for me, that allows, I don't know how far we're going to get into that, because we're going to get into eschatology.
Well,
these are the patterns that we see throughout history of what we call eschatology. And they happen again and again and again until the end, when God just, that's it, it's done. And so, but America has been blessed, and and now we want to take it back. And I think it's too late.
Yeah.
I think it's too late.
Well, at the end of the day,
that's another show.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, like, I think people need to take the lesson that's in Matthew 24, ironically, where they're like, hey, we should go to war for Simon Bar Kokhba. We should go take out Rome, and Jesus is like, don't listen to them. They're crazy. They're not the Messiah. That's not what I called you to do. And like Revelation also, it's like, don't fight against Rome. Don't do it, because Domitian
losing battle.
It's like, we need to, like, whether you believe it's early date or late date, we got to pray for Nero. We got to pray for Domitian, because they're not the enemy. They're not actually the enemy. Biden, Trump, they're not the actual enemy. It's the spirit behind them. That's the enemy. Like, that's what it is. It's the daemon that's behind them,
That's what God has given the world over to. He's commissioned to lead the world to be ruled by evil powers. Paul is very explicit in this. And I think the biggest, my commentary on Daniel. So Daniel 1, verse 1, right out of the gate, God handed over Jehoiakim and king of Judah into the hands of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. God handed over.
Right.
So, the people of God are in exile. Yeah, God exiled them. He's the one that's in control doing it. And Daniel is one of the exiles, but Daniel's not this, sinner, idolatrous kind of person, right? He's a righteous person. And so he's now in this very extremely pagan culture of Babylon, where there's just paganism wherever you would walk. There's paganism. There's polytheism, paganism, the whole 9 yards is going on. And he's in the king's court, and he decides, I will not defile my conscience, but yet at the same time, I will serve this king because this is who God has set. God has set this king up, Nebuchadnezzar. This pagan king God has set up. And in obedience to God, that's Romans 13, by the way. You see where Paul's getting.
Right.
That's the biblical way of doing it. God set this up. And he's done it for his own purposes and reasons. And therefore, in honor to God, not in honor to Nebuchadnezzar's religion or paganism or political views, which Daniel would totally disagree with. But in honor to the authority of God, I will submit to the kings that are established in power. And so Daniel says that you can do that. You can live in a very pagan world. And Daniel also, the message behind that is, this is the world that God has set up, where there are pagan kings and pagan rulers because of principalities and powers in heavenly places. And the reason why he set up this big, giant, fiery furnace for God's people is because because I'm firing you. What's the end of the book of Daniel? Resurrection. I'm preparing my people. I've been preparing and creating my people from day one, from Adam, from Abel. I've been preparing and cooking my people and putting them under the fire, because what I have for them in new heavens and new earth is not going to have pagan kings and pagan rulers. But right now you do. And that's exactly what I want. And, we've got to overthrow these kings so that we can have another pagan king come in its place. Because that's what's going to happen. Yeah. It always does. And that's why I guess I keep coming back to that, because that's the way that it is. And I don't think people, full preterists and others, are taking sin and evil serious.
They're not.
They don't take corruption serious. And if we get a new body when we go to heaven, they don't even take death serious. I was with a hospital Sunday listening to someone with the death rattle going on in their throat. It's god awful. It's a horrible sound. God surely did not intend for human beings to have a death rattle sound in their throat as they're agonizingly breathing in the last breaths of life. That's just not the way he's intended it.
Right.
It's temporary. And that's the importance. That's what I want to scream at people. And the only response they give to that is, well, Sam, God's removed our spiritual death rattle.
Right.
And I want to just strangle them. Like, what he's talking about?
Yeah, they can't even define it half the time. I asked them, and they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, what is spiritual death? It's sin. And they're like, I'm like, so you're saying you have no sin? They're like, well, yeah, I don't sin anymore. Like, okay, sure you don't.
I do. I sin.
Yeah, I do.
That's my wife.
Yeah. No, you made me think of Ezekiel too, where not Ezekiel chapter 2, but you made me think of Ezekiel also, where like he leaves the temple and he's on the chariot and he's on the throne, and because everyone's like, where is God? He left the temple. It's destroyed. Where is he? Oh no. And Ezekiel's like, he's with us. Like, he's following us during the exile. Like, God didn't give up on us. Like, yeah, he's putting us through this, but like he's here with us. Like, he's not gone. Like, he didn't just leave us. Like,
isn't it interesting in the prophets that the exile, and then you read all of this, Deutero, Isaiah, you read all of this, Jeremiah after the exile, and it's just this glowing, Israel will never again be uprooted out of the land. All the glories, the temple, everything's going to be great and glorious. In other words, life for Israel is going to be greater than it's ever been after exile.
Right.
And like, yet, do we got to go through exile? I don't like exile.
And
exile
and yet the full preterist says we're in the restoration today, and it's like, really, we are? Wow, this really sucks. like damn, this is terrible. Like,
horrible.
Like,
people I talk to I preach to or talk to the Bible, they don't even know what it is. I mean, that's where we're at, and it's not because our culture is not inundated with the Bible. You can't flip a magazine or we got a movie, Jesus Revolution's out, and there's another Jesus The Chosen or The Apostle or whatever movie series or something like that's on there. So there's movies coming out and all kinds of things. Mel Gibson and all this stuff, but everything's going on, and still people are illiterate. It's not like the message is not getting out; it's getting out. It's just we're in a culture right now that they don't want to hear it. They just don't. Want
Yeah, I mean, it's like, and that just should show. Like, I always like full preterism. When I was it, like Isaiah 2 always messed with my mind, because I'd always be like, well, wait a second. It says that we're gonna one day everybody is going to tear down all the idols, but then like everyone's still doing idolatry in some way right now. Like, oh, whoops, like contradiction there, maybe. You know.
I know we're getting to an hour, and I know you guys, and Brian, I've known you. Good to connect back with Brian again.
Yeah, it's good to connect.
Rush of memories are coming, 2007, 2008. I love Gary DeMar. I've read Gary's work from 1990, 89, 90, on. So I've followed his entire thing. I don't want to tear down Gary DeMar's work and what it is that he's done. I'm sure Gary DeMar is a brother in Christ, and when he dies, he will go to heaven. I don't have any doubts about any of that. I don't think that Gary is, he's apostatized from the faith and he's antichrist now. And all of that kind of stuff that you're hearing, Lance, you and I are seeing on just the ridiculousness on Facebook. Why are you attacking Gary? And all this stuff.
Yeah.
I believe he's going to hell. And I've not said any of those types of things. Gary is a grown boy. He doesn't wear diapers anymore. He's a grown man. He's got grandkids. He's lived his life, and I wish nothing but success, for Gary and everything that he's doing. It's not personally against. I've always liked Gary. Never really had any qualms with him. I'm bothered, that he blocked me. That kind of blew me out of the water. But I wish no ill will, and this is not about any of that. This is about, does the Christian faith stand for anything? And I know that we have our differences and disagreements, millennial schemes, and all this bunch of other stuff, but we're united on these very core things. And once you start dismantling that, treating it as if second coming is just no real big deal, or resurrection of the dead is just no big deal, then it is very easy to just start dismantling. It's like, to me, it's like it's indicative. And Gary's, this is not his motivation, by the way. He's post-millennial. He's conservative. He believes the Bible. He believes all that. So obviously, he's not trying to disintegrate Christianity. He's trying to change its views and perceptions about the future. He thinks that's an important thing. And let's say that it is an important thing. What we think about the future is important. Well, might that involve a second coming and resurrection of the dead? See, and once you jettisoned that, once that's gone, because that has been such a staple foundational issue for Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant churches. We all agree on this. It's been foundational. It is on par and on level with Jesus is God, God is three in one. It's on par with that. And so what you first have to argue for is that all the eschatological statements of the Nicene, Chalcedon, and Apostles' Creed are not on par with, I believe in God, Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. That it's not as important as that. Maybe God didn't create heaven and earth. I don't know. Maybe, I know the Bible says that he does, but science.
Right.
See, once you start allowing this, then another generation is going to come along and say, yeah, but what about the virgin birth? I mean, you really believe that a baby just popped into Mary's womb? Come on. Really? Come on.
Like a stack of dominoes, you one falls, the rest of them,
And we've seen this in liberal, Brian, go back 1920s, 1930s. You had these great fundamentalist liberal debate. Baptist Church was going through R.A. Torrey, the fundamentals, like coming out with all this stuff. And because they said, once the infallibility of Scripture, all this stuff starts to fall, virgin birth, and it did. Right. And they said, "Oh, you're just being silly. It's a domino theory. You can't believe in that." But it did happen. That is exactly what happened.
Well, we see it happening all the time in full preterism because, like,
oh yes.
Like you see it all the time. Like Don Preston can deny it all he wants, but like he should look around him. Like there's people going like, yeah, I think Universalism. Some people are like hell doesn't exist at all. Like some people are like, oh, I can do whatever I want. William Bell's a polygamist now, apparently. Like, I mean, like Hebrew, he can be a racist Black Hebrew roots Israelite that bangs two women.
What is this Black roots Black Hebrew Israelite?
It's a stupid. Well, okay,
man.
But it's mostly a racist like Black people are superior to white people, and it's so stupid. Like it's just white people and Black people are all made in God's
image. It's as dumb as saying white people are superior to everybody.
Yeah, and
it's on that level of stupidity.
Yeah, like it's taking the arguments that the slaveholders did and like, oh, the mark of Cain is obviously white people, and then the slaveholders are like, oh, well, that's actually Black people because it's a mark. See, huh? Like it's so stupid, and like William Bell is all into that crap now. Apparently, like he's like, oh yeah, polygamy is awesome. I want to join the Mormons or some stupid stuff like that. But that's the thing. Like they're all doing this. Like they're all justifying. Like, oh, I can cheat on my wife. I can go have free sex with whoever I want, whatever I want. Like I made a meme the other day that made everyone mad because it was like I was like spiritual death is no more. So I had like Mormon wives and like all sorts of just everything that they would hate, like. Because it's what it is. Like that's what King eventually like came to the conclusion with mostly. Like, yeah, he would still have some morals, but he came to the conclusion that spiritual death is no more, so everyone's going to be saved no matter what. So it doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah, I mean,
like it's irrevocable. I mean, what can I say? Like, I'm just taking Max King, the founder of full preterism, at his word. And
well, it's when you hang around Kim Burgess. You're saying I'm not a full preterist, but yet Kim Burgess is the greatest theologian to ever walk the planet.
Right.
Who's not a theologian, by the way. At least know Hebrew and Greek if you're going to claim to be a theologian. The theologians that I know, they know Hebrew and Greek pretty good. That's like a prerequisite with these guys. I don't know if if you need to say it, because once that's endorsed, I might as well do a show with a Mormon and say I don't endorse Mormonism and I'm not a Mormon, but here's my best friend that I'm going to do podcasts with, one of the greatest thinkers that I know of, John Morton, Mormon John, come over here, Mormon John. Right. And yeah, you can do that, but don't get angry if people start saying what?
Right.
Because that's just human beings being human beings saying, what? Wait, what? And that's what's going on right now. And then Gary's getting angry. And again, 203 signers. We've only had that website out for a week.
Few days.
And it's like bang, 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 bang. People are all over the place. And the second thing we're recognizing is that people are not even aware
right
of this. Let me end with what you guys think about this. I was talking with Jeremiah Nordier the other night, and he was saying he did another show on hyperpreterism, and you guys did a couple of shows on hyperpreterism. And they said, the more you talk about it, you're actually putting full preterism on the spotlight. And I used to think, yeah, you know what? If I debate Don Preston, I'm actually giving him a platform. And why would I want to do that? Because no one's ever heard of this stuff. But then something switched yesterday, and I said this to Jeremiah, and he's younger, so maybe he's the young new And he said, no, we need to put this on. We need everyone to hear about what full preterism is so that when they see it coming, they can avoid it.
Yeah.
Because it's when they don't see it coming and they're in your little Bible studies over here and you don't know they're there. And I thought, that changes my mind on this. Maybe we should be exposing this.
That's why I've tried to debate Don for years, because I want to make him look like the idiot that he is and let everyone know what a stupid moron he is to believe this crap. Like, honestly.
Don't mince words. How do you really feel?
I know. I'll tell how I really feel. Don will not debate me because he knows I know his material. He knows I could whoop him in a debate. And he is scared because he's debated me twice and lost. I mean, come on. He lost.
So Brian, what is your thought? Because you're doing shows.
I think it's all. I mean, I think Jeremiah's position is the right one. I think it needs to be.
A light bulb went off in my mind.
Yeah, because, like I was talking about in a previous podcast, the more we're getting more articulate theological responses now from Futurism and from Orthodoxy, only because
very good,
they're becoming more familiarized with the full preterist scheme. So I think the more information, I think the better. I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I've even had it too, where people have started to teach preterism and Orthodoxy, and I'm having to go like, people are starting to go like, hey, I know you like wrote a book about this stuff. Like, what is this stuff? Because like, the other day somebody was telling me that.
Look, I got it right here.
Yeah, that's a great book right there. I mean, it's amazing. There's a good guy in it that writes
leafing through that book the other night. Yeah, it's not a bad book.
Yeah, I think it was pretty good. I almost went insane by it, but having to read King, read Preston, read Stevens, almost lost it. But like, hey, it came together. I'm actually gonna try to write some more to it eventually, but yeah, I'm waiting on that because it's like 500 pages. It's like 555 pages, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a big tome.
Well, we'll look forward to it, and I think this is a good conversation, guys. I think we've gotten to about an hour, so I guess Sam, do you have any last words for viewers? Anything you'd like to say to Gary personally before we close?
Yeah, just to those reading the PMs and stuff that I'm writing. As you can see, I'm not a bitter, angry person. My life is, I'm blessed. My life is it has its ups and downs, but I'm not bitter. I don't have time for that. There's too many other things going on. I know the perception looks like what I'm writing on Facebook is like this is consuming my entire life.
Right.
It's not. It may be like 7% of my day. So, I'm not bitter. I don't think Lance is, I'm out to kill Gary DeMar. We're not,
yeah.
we're not doing that.
No.
It's nothing like that. We are out to preserve the historic Orthodox Christian faith, Ryan, as you read it, even this from something like the source of the Oxford Encyclopedia or dictionary that you read from. That's the definition of it. And I like definitions in fixed terms with the way that they are. If you want to believe that Jesus raised the dead and changed the living in 70 AD, be my guest. Just don't call it Christianity.
Right.
Call it something else. At least Joseph Smith had the smarts to say, we need to start our own thing. And he did. And, good for Joseph Smith. He at least knew that he wasn't trying to sell what he was doing as, this is what the historic faith has always believed. No, it wasn't. And he knew that. And so that's all we're saying here. Because once we marry this stuff in with and everything, then I think we've talked about tonight, everything just becomes relativized at this point. You just believe whatever you want, really doesn't make it. As long as you say you're a Christian, it's okay. And that just, can't be the case. But I love Gary. I have no ill will towards Gary. None of the signers have any ill will. We worked on this for months. We went to Gary privately. He rebuffed us. Ken Gentry, he rebuffed. He said he was going to respond to it in private, and then he didn't. And then he rebuffed it, and I don't have time for this kind of stuff. And I pray for Gary. I understand he's undergoing medical issues, and that's private, so I don't want to bring that up. But this is, I think that the doctrine of second coming and resurrection of the dead, new heavens and new earth, are core, fundamental, staple Christian doctrines that cannot be trifled with. And once you unravel it, the rest of Christianity goes bye-bye. It's done. It's finished.
Amen.
And so that's the end of that.
And I'll close for myself at least. I want to say that I don't hate Gary either. I know I did call him an idiot that one time, but I call a lot of people idiots because
Call me an idiot.
I've done it before. I've called Fox an idiot too, and I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just like, that's idiotic. I think something's idiotic.
Yeah.
But, like I don't hate Frost, but sometimes this is idiotic.
Yeah.
Frost has done the same to me. But anyways, like I just keep like, if Gary, if you're listening to this, like, dude, I keep asking you, like, be transparent. It's not that freaking hard. Like if you're thinking about it, if you're thinking about something, that's cool. I don't care about that. Like if you decide you're going to be a full preterist, hey, more power to you, honestly. But like, just be transparent. A teacher is transparent. Like, it's not that difficult. I was a youth pastor. I was a pastor before too, before I became Orthodox. Like, you got to be transparent about your beliefs. Like, if you're thinking about it, don't teach for a while. Like, be transparent though. Like, it's not that difficult. You just say yes, or you say no, or you say, I don't know, and I don't need to teach on this subject right now because I'm thinking this through. Like, that's all I got for you, Gary. But anyways, Brian.
Okay, we'll hope for some more transparency from Gary. We'll see where this goes. I understand he's doing some additional, I guess, some follow-up podcasts with Kim. So we'll keep an eye out for those. In the meantime, thanks again, everybody, for watching this. Thanks again for your thoughts, your observations, your comments, your critiques, what have you. We'll be back in a couple of days, I guess, with another podcast. We got William Vincent's coming on at the end of the week. I've also got a
what about Jason?
I'm sorry, sir.
Jason
should be, well, I actually have to reach back out to him.
Yeah, he'd be great.
Hope to have him. And I've also got, Sam, you're not going to like this. You're actually going to get mad at me, but I've actually got supposed to be doing a conversation with Stacy Turbo. So you have to watch out for that.
Oh, no, I highly recommend that.
Right.
I can't wait to watch that.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll be back in a couple of days. Keep tuned to our channels. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right.